Hi, I'm Yarlin,
And I'm Katie.
and this is Fae and Fables.
Today, we are going to be talking about the Fourth Wing series. And before
Yes.
we get into all of that goodness, we do have a kind of a flow of events, things that we want to talk about. First and foremost, we want to be really thoughtful about our disclaimers. We know that many of these books have really impactful topics that might be hard for some folks to hear. So, note that there are spoilers for the entire Empyrean series. If you haven't read it, bail now.
Yeah.
Bail. Or if you love spoilers, then welcome. And we look forward to talking you through it. Also, please note that the Empyrean series includes lots of themes around trauma, death, grief, emotions,
Mm-hmm.
just really intense events. So if any of that stuff is not within your wheelhouse right now, if you're not feeling like engaging with that, take care of yourself, do what you need to do, because those are going to be things that come up today.
Yeah.
And please know also that this podcast includes adult language and themes, sex and sexuality, and some swears. Who knows? Along the
Yeah.
way, how we're going to end up speaking and interpreting these events. So if those are things that are offensive to you or things you're not wanting to hear today, that's okay. We'll see you. We'll see you sometime, I suppose.
Yeah.
So in the formulating of the flow of the podcast, Yarlin and I have decided that we're going to alternate emceeing the discussion. So this week I will be emceeing our Fourth Wing discussion. So we're going to go through a few different things. We're going to talk about first our reader mind perspective, where we think about what were our general reactions. What did we think of it? Out of 5 stars, what did we think about the spice? All that good stuff.
Yeah.
And then we're going to be delving into our therapy mind. Now, please know that these are 3 long books that have many ideas and themes and things to delve into. This is not designed to be exhaustive of every topic from the book.
Yeah. It's hard to have all the details, so we kind of were able to pinpoint the main things we noticed, but obviously if there are things that are left out, just bear with us because it's a lot of info for 3 books.
Yeah. So, and we're encapsulating all 3, our reactions to all 3. So no, there's probably lots we're going to miss. And if you have any thoughts about things that we miss, please reach out to us. Yeah. On Instagram at Fae and Fables Pod, to our Gmail, faeandfablespod@gmail.com.
And comment on the episode as well. You can do that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Comment, rate us on Spotify and the Apple App Store, or the
Apple Podcast.
There we go. Words. Before we get into all that great stuff, we did have a question or sort of like a comment from a listener who wanted us to talk a little bit about our clinical expertise. Like, what are our qualifications when we say we're mental health counselors? What exactly does that mean? So I figured each of us could just take a moment to talk about what's your licensure and what are the realms that you work in clinically.
Yeah.
So do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a licensed mental health counselor associate. Associate meaning working towards licensure. And the populations that I have worked with, primarily adolescents in community mental health settings, doing, critical management, risk management, things like that. And I do now work with all populations, all ages. And yeah, that's kind of my things.
Power to you for working with those adolescents.
Yeah.
Adolescents, I'm sure we all have memories of that time. It's turbulent. So blessings to you for being the one to support our community adolescents.
Yeah, you really got to connect and connect to when you were their age. And I feel like that helps you really understand what they're going through in that moment and kind of get down to their level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, I am licensed as a licensed mental health counselor, so fully clinically licensed. And I used to work a lot with folks who have substance use disorders, folks who have what's called co
Mhm.
occurring substance use disorders and mental health diagnoses. So, you have somebody who is struggling with an addiction to an opiate and
Mhm.
has anxiety or
Mhm.
something like that.
Yeah.
These days, I really am focusing in on working with folks who have eating disorders. I work from a body liberation perspective, which, if anyone has any interest, I could give a whole dissertation about.
Mhm.
And working with folks in the LGBTQ plus community, and just with folks who have any sort of mental health condition that
Yeah.
come into our practice. So um, that's a little bit about us. If you have any other questions or you're interested in the kinds of things that counselors do or the work that we do, please let us know
Yeah.
because we are really passionate about our work and are passionate about helping folks understand mental health and mental health counseling. So
Yeah.
there's a little tidbit for you. So all of that done and dusted, let's get into our reader minds. So this is
Yes.
us as just bookish people who read
Mhm.
books. What were our reactions? What were the things that stuck out to us? So
Yeah.
I guess my first question for you, Yarlin, is what was your rating? Both on
Mhm.
like let's do like out of 5 stars,
Yeah.
five being the best, and I guess you could go to zero if you wanted to. And then also spice, your
Yeah.
enjoyment of the spice. And I know a lot of folks do peppers, so like five
Yes,
peppers,
chili peppers.
chili peppers. So if you want
Yeah.
to give us your star rating and your chili pepper rating, and then just
Yes.
what your thoughts were about the book as a whole.
Yeah. So with each book, I'll kind of give their rating. So
Mm-hmm.
Fourth Wing, I gave 5 out of 5 in just rating stars, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I love the beginning of things, beginning of shows, beginning of books, just when the world is simpler and like, you know, you can rewatch or reread and it's like that reminiscent, time.
Mm-hmm.
So I really did enjoy Fourth Wing. I thought the spice was also good. I rated it 3 out of 5.
I think
Like,
that's fair.
yeah, I don't think it was that, intense. And we can get into more about like their relationship and stuff. But so that was for Fourth Wing. Iron Flame, I put 4 out of 5 stars.
Okay. Okay.
Spice, still the same, kind of 3 out of 5. Chili peppers, and Onyx Storm, I put 3 out of 5
Okay,
stars.
so we're like a little
Yes,
descending
yeah, it lost a
star
star
ratings.
for every book,
Mm,
and I feel like there's multiple reasons for that, but
mhm,
I thought the first book was just more encapsulating and
mm,
I don't
mm.
know. So that's kind of what I rated it. Spice for Onyx Storm, 2 out of 5. 2 out of 5.
Yeah, Spice took a hit too, unfortunately.
Yeah, and because of what was going on in the book.
Yes, yeah, of course.
So tell me your ratings.
Okay, so I didn't go by book, but
Okay.
now I feel like I should. I honestly, if I had to encapsulate it as a whole, I would
Mhm.
give it 4 out of 5. And for
Mhm.
me, I know there's been some commentary around, Onyx Storm being the least favorite of the
Yeah.
series.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case for me.
Mm.
There was some stuff in Iron Flame that I found to be, and I don't know if this is my counselor side. I have a thing about miscommunication tropes or
Yeah.
tropes that have to do with like we are perpetuating the same communication issue over and
Yes.
over and over again.
Yeah.
So in Iron Flame, this whole dynamic where Violet's like, "Tell me every secret you ever
Oh,
had."
I
Xanon's like, "I'm not telling you my secrets. Say you love me." And Violet's like, "I'm not saying I love you until you
oh
say,"
gosh.
like,
So frustrating. I very much dislike that.
yeah, I by the end of the book, when it was introduced, I could understand the dynamic. By the end of Iron
Mhm.
Flame, I was like, y'all got to get over this. Like, you got
Yes.
to get over it. So, for me, weirdly, Onyx Storm was a break from that, and
Mhm.
it was the first time I really saw Violet and Xaden working together towards something.
That's true.
Like, the first 2 books were really about them arguing with each other,
Yeah.
in my mind, and in the 3rd book, it was refreshing to be like, "Okay,
Mm,
they're on a team together
yeah.
facing this other thing." So, I think for those reasons, it kind of maintains a stable, like, 4 out of
Rating.
5
Yeah.
stars throughout.
Mhm.
I also think some of the commentary that came out around Onyx Storm being the least favorite might have to do with where they are in the arc of the story. If you think
Mhm.
about the fact that there are going to be 5 books,
Yeah.
this is the 3rd book, and so we are in the crux of a lot of the problems, and
Yeah.
you won't get resolution to that
Mhm.
for a while yet.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I think what we're going to see, what I project we're going to see in four is going to be a descent into sort of the darkest part of the narrative, because it's
Mhm.
like that arc where you start with an inciting incident and you sort of fall down into this darkest part, and then the 5th book is going to be this redemption
Yeah.
thing. That
Hopefully.
I, listen, I have so many fears. I have so many fears about what that might look like. But for me, it really, I think we're right where we need to be with the arc,
Yeah.
and people feel the tension. They feel how they're like, I don't feel okay,
Yeah,
and it,
definitely.
yeah, and I
Mhm.
think that's where we need to be. What
Right.
were your thoughts, sort of like as we were moving into the end of Onyx Storm?
Mm.
Like, what were your reactions to Onyx Storm
Itself.
specifically? Yeah, and how did you leave that book feeling?
Many things I'll say. So, the thing with Onyx Storm, as I have seen online, a lot of people had difficulty with all the side characters.
Mhm.
Like, personally, I feel like it's difficult for me to remember everyone's name in all
Mhm.
of the, in like in any series, right? Like,
Yeah,
like you really need to have like that main character group or whatever to really have them become memorable.
sure.
And in Onyx Storm, I was just so confused with, I was like, okay, who's this? And like I remembered some names,
Yeah.
but there was like so much going on with so many people. It was
Mm.
hard to kind of keep up, and that plays into the part of like having the connection with
Yeah.
those people. Like I think it was Quinn,
Mm.
she died or
Mhm.
something happened to her, and I feel like like it gave us like Imogen's POV or of
Yeah.
their first like what they said to each other, and as the reader I was like, oh, okay. I
Mhm.
like if we would have received POVs from those characters in the previous books, we would have felt more connected. But that's
Yeah.
just my personal opinion.
Well, and I like that you're bringing this up because seeing from their point of view is such a
Yeah.
shift
Like, why did we
in
need the POVs
yeah.
at the end of Onyx Storm?
Well,
That's when all the POVs came up.
and that's what I'm like, why? You know what I
Yes.
mean? Is this
Yes.
something that Rebecca Yarros is like twiddling her thumbs, like,
Yeah.
ooh, this will become relevant later?
Yeah.
Or is this just you needed more POVs? I think
Yeah.
those are like we won't know,
Mhm.
until it's gonna be like a million years.
Yeah,
Um,
and
yeah.
people can say that that may be like not so great writing is like
Mm,
people being confused about the characters. I mean, I'm not a writer
yeah.
personally, so I don't know kind of like what she is doing about that or
Mm,
what she meant by that, but really it's hard to connect with characters who really you describe the way they look once in the first book and you never really connect with that again.
mm, mm.
So yeah, there was just a lot of people I was just like, okay, who's this?
Yeah.
Um, the island hopping was interesting. I definitely thought
Mm,
again, adding more characters. Who are
mm,
these people on these islands and how am I supposed to remember them?
yeah.
Um, so yeah, and then obviously the end, that's when everything kind of happens and there's so many Easter eggs and so much stuff.
Yeah.
So that's
It
why I didn't like it too much because it's like, okay, the end is where I don't
mm.
know. I feel
things
like,
start coming off the rails.
yeah.
Well, and it was interesting because I saw in an interview with Rebecca Yarros, someone asked, "What's like the scene that you need to pay the most attention to, or you feel like
Mm,
people there's something going on under the surface and people don't understand what it is?"
yeah.
And Rebecca Yarros literally said the last 100 pages,
Yeah.
and it's so much unfolds in those
Yes.
100 pages, and we're not going to get an answer about does this mean something until
Mhm.
later. And so right now we're in this limbo where, okay, if you're bringing up these POVs for no reason,
Yeah.
that's annoying,
Yeah.
potentially. And if there is a larger reason that we're not privy to until later, either we're
Mm,
going to have some pretty hearty like aha moments where we're going,
yeah.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
I see what you did, or we're going to be left confused. And there's
Mhm.
not really a way to know at this point
Yeah.
how that's going to shake out.
Mhm.
So, given that there's all of these elements going on, what were some of your favorite moments or favorite things that occurred in the book?
In
I think you
all of the
termed them
series?
like tee moments, I think,
TV
which
moments, yes.
tee moments, which
Yes.
I love. I think we should adopt that for the remainder of our podcast.
Yes.
So, what were your tee moments?
Yes. So because a lot of their love and relationship building was in Fourth Wing, a lot of these Teehee moments are from Fourth Wing.
Lovely.
So Teehee moment number one, I know how to handle a corset. Mm.
Ooh, 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 yes. Get it.
Like, yes, strong, confident, love that from Zayden.
Yes, yes.
Um, Fourth Wing, another one. You never considered that it was you I couldn't stay away from.
Ugh.
Oh, I love that.
We love to see it. We love to see obsession that's like hidden under broodiness,
Yes.
and the FMC, the
Mhm.
female main character, just she doesn't understand that all that brooding is really
Yeah.
about
He's hiding it.
he's hiding it. He's trying
Mhm.
his best,
Yeah.
and it doesn't work out for him. He ends up giving it all away anyway, but
Yeah.
he has to be broody about it, obviously.
Yeah, and that ties into my next one. I wanted you from the first second I saw you, Violence. Again from Fourth Wing.
Number one, have to have a nickname. What a nickname in violence.
Yes.
And also, from the moment you saw me.
Mhm.
Okay,
Wouldn't
okay.
anyone love to hear that?
The total, like, unrealistic expectation of just having someone be like, literally saw you,
And that's it.
and that was it. I mean, like, I've seen on the internet, there's some people who claim that's true for them. I have yet to see it in the wild. So, just like an
Yeah.
instant,
What
like,
do
I
they
knew it
call
was
that?
you. Love at first sight.
Love at first sight. Yes.
Mhm, mhm.
Very interesting.
A very, very interesting idea for a couple of counselors. But
Yeah.
we could get into that in
Yeah.
the therapy mind part.
I have two more teehee moments. The
Love.
next one is I'm going to keep you, you're mine, Violet, only if you're mine. I've been yours for longer than you can ever imagine.
Oh my god.
Fourth Wing. So, the part of only you're mine, that's what Violet says, but
Mm,
I thought that was interesting, him saying, I've been yours for longer than you can ever imagine.
mm, mm.
Mm.
Well, and that's interesting because Tarn in Onyx Storm keeps telling Violet, "I don't like your choice of mate," and he
Mm-hmm.
uses the word mate and not
Mm-hmm.
like partner or
Yeah.
boyfriend.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it would feel a little silly in a epic fantasy to call somebody boyfriend, but
Yeah. Mate is where it's at.
mate. But I don't know. I'm wondering if there's
Yeah.
something bigger
A
there
background of
that there's
like,
some kind of like
yeah.
mate bond dynamic that
Mm-hmm.
happens because the dragons are mated.
Yeah, because they don't talk about that, I
Mm,
believe.
I don't think so either. I
Yeah.
mean, here's the thing, folks. We could be missing it. We are
Yeah.
doing our best, and there's a
Yeah.
lot. So,
Yeah.
but that stuck out to me in Onyx Storm. Every time he called
Mm-hmm.
Violet and Xaden mates, I was like, what is that about?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then my last teehee moment is from Iron Flame
Ooh.
because you didn't fall for an ordinary writer. You fell for the leader of the revolution.
Oh, Oh, oh.
I love that. It's like, wow, like, again, so strong, so
Mhm.
confident.
Like, to be the leader.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
So those were my teehee moments. Do you have any?
I do have some teehee moments. I pulled my teehee moments from Onyx Storm. So yeah,
Interesting.
so I have there's a couple of different ones. The first one is in chapter 18 of Onyx Storm. And do you remember when, oh, what's his name? Holden?
Oh, yes, the prince or whatever.
Her ex and the prince,
Yes.
and he's like touching her hair and stuff.
Yes.
After that moment, Xaden says, "Yes, love, I'm jealous. I'm jealous of the armor that holds you when I can't, the sheets on your bed that caress your skin every night, and the blades that feel your hands." Oh,
Wow.
oh my.
I missed this one.
Okay,
Yeah.
here's the thing. A couple of things here that really got me. One is I love the idea of Xaden being jealous. Like,
Yeah.
he's everybody on the Beth Gaius campus, like, he's obviously so attractive. And
Yeah.
Violet
Everyone.
has
Yeah.
these thoughts of, like, all these girls are swooning over Xaden, but he's
Mhm.
choosing me. This was
Mhm.
I think, the first moment I saw where, like, Violet had somebody kind of, like, swooning or pining over her.
Yeah.
And Xaden got a little taste of, like, here's what
Yeah.
it's like to
Yeah.
have somebody else be after your partner.
Yeah.
Um, I also, when somebody calls somebody love, like, hello, love.
Yeah. But I feel
Sweet
like it
neck
has to
love.
be in a British accent.
Oh
I
yeah,
said
no,
what
no,
I
no.
said.
Yeah, yeah. 1 gazillion trillion%. When I say it in my American accent, there's nothing. There's no
Sorry.
magic. There's no magic. When some, like, dark voiced Scottish
Oh,
accented
yeah.
man says it,
Oh, yeah.
totally different. I have two more teehee moments. They're also quotes. I don't know why I put the chapter for the first one and not the others, but I didn't. Um, and both of these are also from Xaden.
Mhm.
And it says, "He cups the back of my neck and pulls me within inches of his face, close enough to kiss. I could reach the rank of Maven, lead armies of dark wielders against everyone we care for, and watch every vein in my body turn red as I channel the power of the continent, and I would still love you. What I did doesn't change that. I'm not sure anything can."
Aw.
And that really plays into that whole thing where Xaden has this last, like, little
Yeah.
love thread
Mm.
in there for Violet.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know if it's the idea of, like, she's the only one who can, like, crack that exterior, but
Yeah.
it
It
made
seems
me.
that way. Yeah.
So that got me. And then the last one I have is, "I live by you. When have I ever given a fuck about the codex or the code of conduct?" He
Mhm.
cradles my face and leans down, resting his forehead against mine. "I am yours and you are mine, and there's no law or rule in this world or the next that could change that."
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the possessiveness, the dedication, just the idea that it, anytime there's a declaration of, like, I would cross
Yeah.
worlds and realms
Yeah.
to be by your side.
And I think
I'm done.
he says something similar like that. I think it's an Iron Flame. I don't
Mm,
remember. I didn't
mm,
write it down, but he also says, I don't care what people think about me,
yeah,
type along the lines of that. And I thought
yeah.
that was really cool too.
And I think that's what's nice about Xaden as a character, is because he's been ousted in so many ways,
Mhm.
in so many different areas, that he has this, like, I don't give a fuck attitude.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and and
That
it's a
is what is
yeah,
attractive.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Someone
yeah.
who's trying too hard? No. No.
He's which cracks me up that he's, like, the professor for a while. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, we obviously know that he's a rule breaker by nature, so it's interesting to see him. Well, it's interesting to see him in that role, and then to
Mhm.
immediately break the rules and be like,
Yeah.
I don't care about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gone through some of our reactions and our teehee moments and quotes. So now we're going to shift into some of our therapy mind thoughts. We're going to take a little bit of a break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about some of the things we noticed as mental health counselors.
All right.
Hi, everybody. We are back after our break. And in the first half of the episode, we really spent most of our time going over reader mind. Now we are going to explore therapy mind. So there were a few different things that, as I was reading, I highlighted as themes. So I'm just going to highlight the theme, what I thought, and see what you think, Yarlin. Both what's going on in the book, but also what's going on in the therapeutic space. The first thing that really stuck out to me as I was considering what might be relevant from a mental health counselor perspective is the venin. Venin, they are the baddies. They are the villain. And they go from being sort of this boogeyman that we don't know anything about to toward the end, we're getting much more information about the venin, who they are, how they operate, their purpose, etc. And one of the things that really sticks out to me with the venin is how much emotion and power are connected. And this is a big one for us counselors. We're constantly talking to clients about emotional expression and vulnerability and what that means. And so one of the things about the venin that seems so striking is that, one, they are after power, and two, that in order to have power, it seems like they have to give up emotion. That to have power means to be emotionless. And to have emotion is to not be able to access one's full power. And you see the venin talk about this. I'm curious to see what Rebecca Yarros is going to do with this. But I'm curious, Yarlin, what your thoughts are about this, like, relationship between power and emotion, like where you see it in the book, but also what are you seeing clients and folks in the clinical space talking about when we're thinking about how we engage with our emotions and how that makes us feel powerful or powerless?
Yeah, so I think in the books, because venin are constantly searching for more power and draining lands, possibly people, of their powers, it removes the aspect of caring about what they're doing, and they really are just really in search of more. So kind of feeding that insatiable need of more power, and that relating to in real life in counseling, where a lot of times people feel that having emotions is seen as a weakness, as something that kind of holds you back or makes you, again, weak, not strong, feeling that you have to kind of portray this type of image of a person doesn't cry because that's weak, and you kind of just have to man up and do this. So that's kind of a lot of the themes that we see in the counseling space, and a lot of unlearning and being able to be kind with yourself and accepting that emotions are there, and when you bottle them up and forget that you have them, they come out whether you like it or not. And usually in bad situations.
They do not care. As much as we would like to, like, use our, like, higher thinking and be like, no emotions, you don't have a place here. Emotions are like a whatever, I'm gonna express myself.
And that's what makes it the human experience. That's what makes us human, is the ability to feel. If not, we'd be robots, right? So it's being able to be more in tune with that and understand, like, this is a strength. I can feel all these things. I can understand them, accept them, or even be in the process of all of that. But it should be seen more as a strength, and being, like, grateful that you can feel all these things.
Yeah, I really like what you said about, like, this message around manning up, because I think there's such a gender dynamic here as well,
That's true.
In society there are messages that both women and men, and also, like, gender expansive folks, trans folks, who are sent these messages about what emotion should be like based on your gender presentation or gender expression, and there's pressures on both sides of that, right? So we have men who are told not to feel, that to feel is to be weak, that to express emotion is to be weak. And similarly, women are seen as these arbiters of emotion, that we operate in this emotional caring space, and that's the only space we have to like exert our power is in with emotion, or that we're over emotional. There's so many of these gender
Oh
themes
yeah.
around how we relate with emotions.
Yeah, I especially the over emotional part, and
Mm.
you can see so many aspects of that, and you as the listener, you can connect that to maybe moments in your life where you were called sensitive or
Oh
overly
my gosh.
emotional, or feel like you're overthinking, like people kind of diminishing your experience by telling you those things.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I have a reel in my head of people being like, stop being so sensitive. It's like, I am empathic, and that is a strength. I'll be interested to see if Rebecca Yarros is thinking as deeply about sort of this connection between power and emotion in her future books, or if that's something that we're tracking. And I don't know if we'll have an answer for that, like what her overarching like arc and message for the Venin are. I'm also curious, or a second thing that I wanted to highlight, as with so many of these fantasy romantasy books, is the role of trauma and of how trauma shows up after a traumatic event has occurred. In the clinical space, we use something called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, or the DSM, and in it there's a diagnosis called PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. And while none of these characters are diagnosed in this book, because apparently having mental health counselors in fantasy books is not the norm. Shout out to anyone who wants to write that. But you clearly see that traumatic events are unfolding. Folks are dealing with the results of their traumatic experiences.
Yeah, so
And
much death.
yeah, yes, like every 2 pages. The very first book starts with death. It starts with
Yes.
trauma. And in these fantasy romantasy books, and you know, you could tell me your experience, Yarlin, but so much of the time I see this represented as nightmares and flashbacks. If you're gonna have trauma, the symptom after that is a nightmare and a flashback. And obviously, when you have your nightmare or your flashback, you need to have your like brooding MMC or FMC come to your aid when you're sleeping and you're like tossing around in your sleep. And there's sort of a trope that exists even around these symptoms of trauma. What are you seeing in real life in clinical spaces around trauma, or the effects of trauma, that we don't see represented in books? And what ways do books get it right and wrong?
Yeah, so I do think that the flashbacks and nightmares are very common and
Mm,
accurate. Like, people reliving their trauma through nightmares, or also connected to like future anxiety of them having nightmares connected to what they feel anxious about or worried about.
sure.
Also, something that is mentioned in the books is Violet's hyperarousal.
Yes.
That's another symptom of always kind of being on edge and, very aware of your surroundings to an extreme level. So it was an example of when I think someone was trying to scare her from behind, and she got very intense and like had a knife at their throat,
Mm,
and she said something along the lines of like, not to sneak up someone behind. And so a lot of that hyper arousal and all of those feelings like could be other feelings under that,
sure.
sadness, anger, and like very much connected to like the anger iceberg. So that
Oh,
is something
yes.
that I always kind of bring in for education, especially with like teenagers or adults,
Sure.
to help them understand that anger could be the overwhelming feeling that you may think is the only feeling, but underneath there's so much more. And with PTSD, there's could be such a complex emotions and symptoms, and everyone is different, so you will have different symptoms.
Yeah, I love that you bring in basically those somatic pieces. Where does body get where does trauma get stored in our bodies? How does it show up in the ways that our bodies are communicating with us, in addition to the mental and the emotional components? Even, some themes in trauma, processing trauma around guilt or trying to find fault. There's so many experiences where folks have suffered at the hands of trauma, or who have been survivors of trauma, who are trying to work out fault or blame or guilt. And so being able to be there for folks and help folks realize that trauma so often is something that comes to our door unbidden, and that we have to use these somatic and emotional experiences to help us make meaning in a way that doesn't place blame on the person who has experienced this trauma. And I think it would be interesting to see how that plays out in books 4 and 5, where I'm imagining that there's going to be a lot of traumatic experiences around Xaden being Venin, or potentially even like, how are Xaden and Violet's interactions going to be if Xaden is completely emotionally shut off?
Wow.
I would be like horrified if Xaden were to like perpetuate any harm toward Violet, like, if his Venin family is like, go kill Violet, that's going to be a really traumatic thing to be like, this, my partner in life is now harming me, and how do you contend with the role of the Venin mindset, I guess.
Yeah, and even the he may feel tempted to kind of drain all that power that she has. Apparently her powers are what did Rebecca say, like 10% or something?
Yeah, like we're not even seeing.
So imagine like that may be a temptation that Xaden has to fight, could cause them to have distance. Like we don't know yet. We'll see.
I'm scared. So one of the things that you brought up earlier that I want to bring us back to for a moment is the role of death and processing death and grief and bereavement in these books. And as I mentioned, the very first line of the first book is like about death. And you continue to see these moments where human life is sort of tossed away in Basgiath's society as this expendable thing. And you watch Violet process deaths in various ways, some of them very profound, i.e. Liam.
Yes.
And then others, she's like, I can't even get close to this person because I don't know if they're going to be here tomorrow. So what are you seeing around grief and bereavement in the book itself, but also how is it portraying or misportraying grief and bereavement in the real world space?
Yeah, in the book we do see that Violet is affected by death. It's something that is new to her, it seems, and something that she didn't previously experience to this extent, or this amount. So I do think Liam's death really affected her. I mean, he was basically her bodyguard and was with her to protect her. That can have such a connection. So his death was really difficult for her. And the way that she tried to cope with death after that, of like trying to not get close to people, like that is kind of the effects of dealing with so much of this death, is like you want to just keep trying to avoid it in whatever way possible. So if that means like not getting close to people or trying to help like Liam's sister on how to not die,
helping her to not.
Yes, and even with as much where Liam's sister did not want her help and really put her blame for her brother's death, like Violet kept trying and was like, I don't care, you're gonna have my help.
Yeah. And it felt like that, such a strong portrayal of survivor's guilt too. You can see these pulls, and that's what Liam's sister is really tapping into. She's like poking at that survivor's guilt. And it's interesting to watch Violet in moments really succumb to that and be like, I think about this about myself all the time and how much I didn't save him, but I tried my best. And then other times where she just pushes it off. She's like, I can't. No, like, I rebuke that.
Yeah, so it must feel really hard to just be in this whole setting and just see that lives are so meaningless. It's just part of the process. You gotta just, if you're the one who survives, lucky you, you move on. Especially, I think it was hard for her seeing the younger years
Sure.
of the younger classmen, I guess if you want to call them, going through the threshing and all of that. She like sometimes she didn't want to see, and so it was difficult for her. In the therapy space in real life, I feel like therapy and grief together, they go hand in hand, because a lot of times some people need more tools to process what they've gone through, and processing that grief looks different for every person. So that's something that you come into, you discuss the stages of grief and what stage they're at right now. Maybe it's something where the death happened many, many years ago and it's still coming up, or it's coming up in different ways. And something I really like to do with clients is like narrative therapy. So writing a letter to that person if there are unresolved feelings or things that you wish you could have told them. That's something I like to do a lot, because it helps get whatever they got off their chest and just feel that freedom. At least I would hope that that's what happens. So
yeah, and I've also done exercises like that with clients, and I find it to be a really empowering exercise as well, because you can help people to decide how they want to write. Like, do you want to record yourself saying something? Do you want to write it down? Okay, what do we want to do with this letter? Do we want to burn it? Do we want to bury it somewhere? Do we want to... There are these ways of grieving that society dictates, and I think it can be a communal activity that can be really helpful when you have a community of people who are grieving. And I really like what you said about the individuality of grieving, that there's no good or bad way to grieve.
Right.
I would also contend that grief is not a thing that you do for a certain amount of time and then you're over it.
Right.
I think that's one of the great myths around grief, is that at some point you're supposed to be, quote unquote, over it. And it's okay if you're not. Grief changes us in ways that are sometimes permanent, and it's okay to be 10, 20, 30 years later having grief emotions pop up over someone that you miss. So really normalizing these societal rites of passage as an important part of grieving, but also let's make it individual. If this kind of grieving doesn't work for you, that's okay, and let's find our own way. So I wanted to turn our attention toward some of the relational pieces, because some of the stuff, or the stuff we've been talking about thus far, has really had to do with like individual processing of events, and two things pop up for me, and we'll just start. Well, we'll start with the first one. That's always a good place to start. First, I wanted to highlight the main source of tension between Xaden and Violet across the books. It shifts over time, and we talked a little bit about this in the first part, but this tension that exists between boundaries and honesty, and how relationships play out in striving for getting closer to one another while still recognizing the individual humanity and boundaries that a person may have. So what did you think about that for Xaden and Violet on a therapeutic level? And then also, how do you see that showing up with couples and families?
Yeah, so with Violet and Xaden, their constant back and forth about being honest and telling each other all of the secrets that they have. Truly, I feel like Violet kind of set herself up for disappointment with that, because how do you expect one person to just think about all their secrets and tell you all of them? Especially someone like Xaden, who's part of, I guess, leadership, and he's part of, the revolution and all of this. Like, he has a lot of secrets that are more than just for him to
Sure.
keep. So,
and Mira even says that at one point, I think.
Yeah.
She says to Violet, you picked the wrong partner if you think that Xaden's going to tell you everything. The nature of the work that we do is such that, no one can tell anybody everything. Even as your sister, I can't tell you everything. And I think that gets broken down a little bit as they shirk the rules of Batskaeth and the rules of the Navarin society.
Yeah.
Once they start giving them like the big middle finger to every rule ever, which I loved Violet in that when she was just like, fuck this, I'm not doing what you say. I was like, yes, Violet.
Yeah.
Finally. Hell yeah. But you see this shift a little bit across time when folks stop playing by the rules of the society. And we need to recognize that the rules of the society are a powerful thing. And at the start of these books, they're all operating under intense pressure. And their role is such that secrecy is a part of it. So how do you even go about asking someone for all their secrets when...
Without even saying secrets about yourself. Like, come on, what does she say about herself?
Well, okay, and this is where I'm a little bit... I'm a Violet apologist on some of this. Although her demanding his secrets to me is such a violation of, like, human autonomy.
Yes.
And I have big qualms with that. What I will say is, in the first book, in many ways, I feel like this is her first, like, real relationship, real love. And her behavior very much mimics that, where she just kind of falls into it. She's like, I just love him. I'm giving him my all. I'm giving him everything. And in the end, she discovers that giving all of yourself and just sort of unbidden and without boundary leads to hurt, or can lead to hurt. But also, Xaden he doesn't tell her about her brother. And to me, that's a big broach of trust. Like,
true.
Especially Xaden being a character who doesn't really care about the rules, but you want to keep Brennan's existence a secret when you know how hurtful that was. It just, I can see the motivation as to why she's like, tell me everything, because there's a deep betrayal there, and I think that's a response out of hurt. That's not something you can necessarily demand from someone.
I would say I agree. When you spin it that way, I can agree.
You're like, I guess when you talk about it like that.
I can agree. I also think it's not in his place to reveal that secret about specifically the brother one. Like,
that's true. That's like in Brennan's court as well. And that's a big part of that's on him.
Right. Like, that's a family thing to figure out,
Yeah.
So that's where I come and I'm like, okay, but again, Violet's just going too hard right now. Yeah. And it definitely was too much. It's too much. Yeah. That's how you push someone away. Mm-hmm. It's like the constant, like, you need to tell me everything right now, mm-hmm.
or
we can't work. It's like that whole back and forth was definitely very annoying.
Yeah. Which I liked in Onyx Storm when that stopped. And I think I mentioned this in the first half, but when they finally, and I thought it was like the whole Xaden saying, you have to say I love you. She's like, I'm not saying I love you until you tell me all your secrets. I was like, you both. And there was a piece of me that was like, in this society, you could die tomorrow. You could both be dead tomorrow, or even this afternoon, given how unstable this place is.
In 30 minutes.
In less than a minute, you both could be dead. And do you want to reach Malik's gates and be like, we spent our whole time arguing about when we were going to say I love you and when we were going to reveal all our secrets?
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, I had so many feelings about that. And in Onyx Storm, it was really nice. I think you see in Onyx Storm them arguing as a couple in a way that makes more sense. You could still have arguments. You could still disagree.
Yes.
You can still, have your values, and it's okay to have values around wanting truth. It's okay to have values around having boundaries. And I saw in Onyx Storm a situation where they worked it out in a much more
mature way,
mature, collaborative, like
as
they
a
were
team.
on each other. Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
I think that was the big shift, is like once they realized that they were on the same team fighting against something bigger than them, they were able to be like, okay, this is not what is important to like have an issue about right now. So I really do think that was a lot of growth for them personally and in their relationship. So we see that now shifting to like the counseling space and in real life, there is a lot of that boundary work and honesty that honestly for me comes up with almost every client, dealing whether it is with friendships or relationships with family. So it's just being able to find the way for them to be their most authentic self, with being able to be honest about their expectations, their values, and boundaries, because all that is very important in your day-to-day life.
Yeah. Well, and boundaries in my mind are something that are continual conversations. So even as we see in Iron Flame, one of our issues is they sort of set these rigid, like, line in the sand statements and then refuse to budge from their position. And there are some things for which that is super important. No one should ever have to endure emotional abuse, physical abuse, any kind of absolute, like there are circumstances where boundaries are immovable, and that's a reality. And something that I see occurring more and more in therapeutic spaces is the weaponization of boundary talk, where someone will say, will pick an ancillary thing or several of them and say, this is a boundary for me and I don't move on this. And the issue with that is when everything you say is a boundary you will not move on, what is your partner supposed to do with that?
Right.
There's a very delicate balance that needs to be struck around what is a boundary for you, and then what is something that you find important and you can dialogue about, or that you can compromise on, or that you can dialogue about. And if you lean too far one way or the other, that's trouble. If you have no boundaries, trouble. If all you have is boundaries, where is there room for your partner to have autonomy, for your partner to have their boundaries or their needs met? Which is, I think you see that balance coming into force in the third book. And when we meet folks in the therapeutic space, it really is helping folks who are maybe trending toward one side or another to move toward that middle place where it's like, I can have my boundaries, I can have my limits. I also have areas of flexibility where I can meet my
flexibility,
partner.
yes, that's so important, because you gotta adjust. Every person will have their own differences, values, and boundaries, and you as a person adjusting, obviously having things that are very, this is it, but there are things where you can find ways to work with that. And again, all depends on like how you want that person part of your life.
And being creative, right? So many times when we're stuck in relationships where it seems like there's two values or two boundaries that are butting heads, well, we either have to decide that these lines in the sand are not going to move, and therefore, okay, we have some consideration to do about our role as partners. And then if there is some wiggle room, let's get creative. Like, let's help each other, maintain our values and find creative ways to communicate. So one last thing I wanted to speak to from the therapy mind space, and then we're going to get into unhinged thoughts and theories and things for books 4 and 5 of the series, is the theme around found family and blood family. And so much of this, as I was reading this, hit upon themes around what is the definition of family, what makes for a person's family system, and the ways that we've really broken down some of these constructs around what family means. We're moving away from this very like cis het monogamy, two partners, blood related children dynamic, and we're seeing much more in the way of blended families, found families, folks being able to identify who is my family system, and it doesn't really necessarily have to do anything with are you related to me by blood. And I see this playing out in these books. Violet really having these blood family struggles unfolding throughout the 3 books, and there's challenges that come with that. And then on Xaden's part, really seeing the found family dynamic. Now, in Onyx Storm, we do meet Mama Xaden, or whatever her, I don't know her last name, Mama Xaden. We end up meeting some of Xaden's blood family, and I think there's much more of a found family dynamic around Xaden, where among the the marked ones. So what are you seeing around family structures? I mean, if you want to speak to the books or in the therapeutic space, just kind of what are your thoughts on how we structure family in our minds?
Yeah, so some of us do have that mindset of like, but it's your family, but it's your mom.
Yeah.
You have to talk to them. And that mindset will really make you feel stuck in the situation that you're in. And again, it's like the flexibility and creativity of understanding, like, you can have more than this. You can find people who connect with you in a much deeper level, who are more accepting as you with who you are, and have that really close connection versus like this type of maybe conflict with your blood family constantly, so finding that within friends or with other found family, people who maybe are still part of your family but could be adopted or like long distance, and really just understanding that you can make it what you want it to be.
Yes, I love that you bring in this pressure that people feel around, oh, well, you have to talk to them. They're your sibling. They're your parent. They're your fill in the blank. And the reality is that presumes that those relationships would be healthy and helpful and healthful. And that's not always the case.
Yeah, many of them are not.
Yes. So recognizing that when we are constructing our family systems, one, there are some societal judgments that we might receive along the way, and what do we want to do about that? And then also, how do we rise above those things to create family that's going to work for us? Okay, so those are our therapy mind thoughts. Please let us know if there were any other themes that came up for y'all. You can comment in several different places on Instagram, in the Spotify and Apple podcast space. But now we are going to get into our unhinged thoughts, theories, and wonderings. And this one was tough for us to try to boil down into just a couple of different topics, because famously the last 100 pages are an absolute like cluster of events, theories, what's happening, who's where, what are we doing. So we just selected a couple of different things to highlight, and know that there's much more to unpack, but we don't want to break out all the red string and all the all the cork boards we have. So in the last 100 pages, we see several things go down, some of which we are privy to, some of which we are not. But one of the things that is on the mind of many is this Venin brother that Xaden now has, and who's the Venin brother? And the main information we have is that they are called brother, so that if we're using gendered terminology here, that's a consideration. And also, we know that Xaden says, you've watched me struggle for these last 5 months, and you watched me fight this with everything that I have, and you chose it anyway. So and we also, Rebecca Yarros has given some little hints. And what are your thoughts, Yarlin, about who the mysterious brother is?
So I feel like I'm gonna go for Bodhi.
Okay, let's get into it. Why Bodhi?
I feel like Bodhi could be the one because it is read within the book, within Onyx Storm, of like, you know your promise, or like stick to your promise, or something like that Xaden tells him, and that comes up sometimes. Another quote is like, Tyrandor is safe in Bodhi's hands should I fall. That one is maybe an Iron Flame or something like that.
Which, I mean, if you think about the fact that Xaden and Violet got married, and now Violet's in control, presumably, of Tyrandor, maybe that's because Bodhi's out of commish. He's no longer the protector of Tyrandor, and now Violet has to be.
Yeah. So tell me, what are your thoughts on who you think the brother is?
Oh, man. So Bodhi's definitely on the list. And I really was pro Garrick as the brother. And that was my initial reaction. Interviews with Rebecca Yarros have come out where she says, think about who you're not seeing, and think about, and this is the important line that sticks in my head, think about who doesn't feel like they have enough power. And I think Garrick and Bodhi are both good candidates for that because they're sort of adjacent to Xaden's power. Like, they're related, either by blood or by found family ties to Xaden, and he's very powerful, and they're always kind of supporting him or supporting the movement, but never quite the center of attention, except for when Garrick ate that piece of cake and nearly died, which is like not the way to be known. Also, I think it's Imogen who has a huge crush on Garrick, like throughout the books. You see it like over and over again. She's secretly pining for him, I think, which will be interesting to hear about. But I do think it's Garrick or Bodhi. I know that some folks have listed those options as sort of like, no, you have to think deeper. But sometimes I think it is I think sometimes your instinct might be the right way. And maybe when the fourth book comes out, I'll eat my words. But I have seen that there's theories about who's the island guy they meet with all the big cats, with all the cougars.
That is,
dang it,
I forgot his name.
Okay, so
when they meet Xaden's mom, right?
Well, this is so this is the island before they meet Xaden's mom, I do believe. Or maybe is it the same island? Point is, dude with the big cats. That's what we're gonna call him.
The big cats.
Please don't call me out for not knowing the name. I've seen some theories where he might be the mysterious brother. The other big question that many folks have been left with is what happened when. So we know that at the end, Violet, her memory goes bye-byes for a little bit. And at first, not clear why it goes bye-byes. But Imogen at the very end, Violet says, what did you do? Imogen says, what you asked me to do.
Right.
Which points to the fact that Imogen may have erased Violet's memory during this marriage ceremony on purpose, that Violet had asked her to erase her memory for some compelling reason. What do you think happened? Why the secrecy? What's happening around Violet and Xaden's marriage? They got married in the Temple of Dune. Like, what's going on there, do you think?
I feel like it was a way to protect something bigger than them. In a way of like, okay, so we know Dane can read memories or like read your mind or whatever. when he touches
Yeah.
you. So I feel like he can have a little villain arc in a
Oh,
moment.
shoot. And Sloane does say, she's like, you are way more powerful than you should be. And he's
Yes.
like, I know.
So what if they got married
Mm.
for Violet to have power in Tyrrendor
Okay.
while Xaden goes somewhere to heal or go somewhere,
Okay.
you know, remote or something and people not know where he's at. So
Okay.
that could be why they erased Violet's memory. So if she were to ever be questioned or Dane come around and be like, hey, we're besties again.
He's trying to touch her face and she's like, get away from my face.
Yeah, so maybe it's a way again to protect like whatever else is gonna come in the next books.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's something going on with Violet in the Temple of Dune. I think like you
Yeah.
meet the people across the book who are like, do you yearn for temple? like
I love the way you say that. It's so funny.
I have to admit that springs out of a friend of mine and I. That's how we from the moment we saw it, we were reading it at the same time. Onyx Storm, and it was like 2:00 in the morning, and one of us was just like, do you yearn for temple?
We don't know if that's their actual voice, but it's the new voice.
And so now every time I even hear the word yearn in my mind, just know is, do you yearn for temple? Anyway, like a Scandinavian temple woman, I don't know. And so so I think there's something going on. The fact that Violet was like half initiated into the temple. She's got the hair. She's got the raw power. Something's going on there. She's obviously calling in favors with them to do the marriage. And so I really feel like Xaden and Violet had some sort of setting up to do around like schemes for later, and they needed
Right.
to make sure that those schemes would not come to light. What I'm curious about is, did Xaden even have enough emotional left in him to care enough? Like he's got this sliver of love for her inside, but once he yields all of that emotion, like how did they even get him to go to the temple and do all this scheming? Like, or did he set it up ahead of time?
That's what I was just gonna say. I feel like this could be part of maybe a conversation that they had,
Okay.
like all together as a team, and like Imogen like knowing the plan. And it's somehow it reminds me of if y'all are Vampire Diaries fans.
You know that I am.
So you know when someone becomes a new vampire or is, you know,
The Strigoi.
yes.
That right out. I don't know.
And in the brothers would lock them up in their house basement thing to get them to kind of chill out, or to get I forgot what it's called, the flower things that they drink.
Oh shoot! It's been a while
been
since
a long time.
I've read Vampire
But
Vampire Academy.
It helps me connect to like that. Maybe they lock him up somewhere to heal him, whether that is against his will at that moment, because you know, he's in that state of mind of like no emotion. I just want more
Sure.
power. So maybe they're trying to deveninize him.
I wonder too if Sloane's going to be a part of that, because she transfers the power from
Right.
Dane to Brennan, so she seems like kind of transfers power places, and I'll be curious to see like
Yeah.
she can do that. Yeah, so those are some of our thoughts and theories about what's going to happen with the brother and the marriage and all the things. Do you have any other thoughts for books 4 and 5 before we close out for the day?
Something that was noticeable is like the cover of the books is you notice how it goes from gold to like
Yeah.
that reddish when it goes to Iron Flame, and then now in this one it's like the black to the silver.
Yeah.
So a lot of people were thinking that this next one could be like all silver or going to
Ooh.
a different color.
Well, it would, like, I would imagine mostly silver and then maybe bleeding into like,
Yes.
I don't know,
A
maybe
magical color.
Well, I mean, maybe blue because of the ice, like the
Oh,
Venice, like, I don't
yes.
know. And I think we won't know for a while. I'm
Oh yeah,
so
it'll be a
sad.
while, but we do have other books coming up that we're excited
Ooh,
to talk about. And
yes.
whenever Rebecca comes out with book 4, then we will revisit.
Then we'll be ready. We'll be here. We'll be waiting. Rebecca, anytime you want to release that book, do it like Beyonce. Just release the book. Don't make it this long drawn out thing. And then we can all just lose our minds again for another week while we read it and digest
Yeah,
it.
she doesn't seem that type because
No.
she's a Swiftie, and
No.
Swifties are all about Easter eggs, and she
Yeah.
probably thinks like she probably has that same mindset when it comes to her books of just like everything is very much pre-planned and
Yeah. She did say, she's like, I'm a schemer. And you
yeah.
know what? I respect the hustle. I don't like it. I don't like it. It doesn't feel good, but Rebecca, we're at your whim. We're at your beck and call. So that is going to wrap it up for
Yay!
our reader mind and therapy mind thoughts on many of the things that unfolded across the Empyrean series thus far. Our next episode is going to be about Fire in the Sky. So if you want to follow along and do some reading with us, please be on the lookout for that episode coming out. Also, again, we talked about a lot of really impactful themes today. If you're struggling, if there was something that was triggering in there for you, please note this is not designed to be a replacement for mental health counseling or for formal therapy, and we highly recommend that you seek out supports where you find they're most helpful, whether that's with family, friends, with your own mental health therapy. But please make sure to take care of yourself. So thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
See you next time.
Ah!
Bye.